a Republican lawmaker is introducing legislation for Trump's ban on transgender troops so it becomes permanent federal policy. The latest developments come after the Supreme Court basically decided that recently it allowed the Trump administration, at least for now, to enforce its ban that was previously blocked by a lower court. Legal challenges to the ban will continue, but for now, thousands of US transgender troops will be forced out of the military. For more, we're joined by Colonel Bree Fram, an openly transgender member of the US Space Force. Fram is also one of the highest-ranking transgender service members in the US Armed Forces. Thank you very much for joining us here on Washington Watch. Firstly, Colonel Fram, how are you feeling after everything that's happened?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I have to note that I am here speaking with you in my personal capacity, and my views are not necessarily reflective of the United States government or the Department of Defense. But I am heartbroken. I look around and I see transgender service members here in the United States who have served openly for nearly a decade, accomplishing incredible things and meeting every standard, doing exactly what this nation has asked of them, facing the loss of their careers, their livelihoods, and what they have cared so much about.
Colonel Fram, the Trump administration says having transgender troops undermines readiness of the US military. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I think you can look at our service records and our ability to perform our mission both here at home and deployed all around the world. Or the argument that says we're not deployable, while at the same time, many transgender people are deployed right now, today, accomplishing their mission. So for all of these claims, there is no evidence to back that up, and we have now had multiple judges rule just that. They have pointed to our service records as Exhibit A as to why many of the arguments advanced by the administration have no merit.
Yeah, right. But Colonel Fram, the Supreme Court has allowed the ban for now. Wondering what your reaction was when that came down.
I was shocked. I truly was shocked because precedent has long said that the courts should act in a way that preserves the status quo so that no harm can be done while we go through with the litigation on a policy. And in this case, we are seeing real harm. We are seeing lives upended, careers ended, and a whole huge number of people who are facing the loss of everything. And so I was just incredibly sad as to what happened from the Supreme Court.
Now, Colonel Fram, along with other trans active duty members, you have until next month to step aside voluntarily. Wondering what you've decided.
Well, first, I want to make it clear this is not a voluntary separation. No one would be leaving if this policy didn't say you need to get out now or you may be facing adverse consequences. So the decision is really very personal and depends a lot on anyone's individual circumstance. I'm going to take as much time as possible to understand and wait for service level policy to be published before making any sort of decision that is going to affect my career, that is going to affect the lives of my family. And I would encourage any other service member to do the same, where we get as much information as possible before making whatever decision takes into account our needs and that of our families.
Now, the Supreme Court decision has given the Trump administration, of course, this big win. Litigation continues in the lower court. But are you expecting any kind of reversal in your favor in the future, or do you think that the writing is pretty much on the wall right now?
Well, we're going to let the court cases play out because while the Supreme Court let the government's policy go into effect, so far through the courts that have ruled on the merits of the case, they have shown that the government's policy simply lacks any sort of evidence to back up the claims that it's making. So while I believe there is hope that the courts could continue to rule in our favor, by the time we get to that point, the damage of this policy will have been done, and we may have lost a generation's worth of transgender service members.
Michael, from just looking broadly here, away from just the United States, do you worry that this has set the clock back for countries around the world who are considering perhaps allowing transgender troops or haven't done so yet fully? India perhaps is an example.
I think it's important to note our history here in America of inclusion, where every argument that has been levied against a group that has joined the military, whether that was African Americans, women, lesbians, or gays, were the same argument used against transgender people. And every time that group proved just how capable they were of serving, and our military emerged stronger because of it. So I believe that any nation that cuts off access to talent is deliberately limiting its capability.
Thank you very much indeed, Colonel Fram, there joining us here on Washington Watch.